first thing we're going to do is we're going to create two files, one called index.html and one file called index.js. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and type boilerplate code for the index.html file. We're going to go ahead and link the style sheet even though we haven't yet created it, but we're going to do this in a later video. We're then going to go ahead and create the Sally Says header, and we're going to copy paste in the paragraph that talks about what exactly the Sally Says game is. Then we're going to create a button so that the user can click the play game button, and we're going to give it an ID of start game. That way we can reference it later in the JavaScript file. Next, we're just going to create the boilerplate links to the JavaScript files. So we're going to create one link to the index.js file and one link to a jQuery file. And remember, we have to put the jQuery link first before the index.js link in order for this code to work. All right, so this is just making sure that the HTML file actually has what we expect it to have. So it has a header, it has the paragraph describing what the game is, and we also have a button that's called Play Game. Now we're going to start putting in the boilerplate code for the index.js file. This code again just says the program won't run until the document's finished loading. And the event.prevent default just prevents the code from, or the program from refreshing the page automatically. All right, so now we're going to start typing out the pseudocode. The first thing we're going to create is we're going to create a function called startGame that's going to initialize this sequence with 3 different colors for the user to memorize. Then we're going to create a function called getColor. The getColor function is going to randomly generate one of 4 colors. So we're going to use a random number generator to generate a number between 1 and 4, and then we're going to use a switch statement to determine whether to change that number into a color. Then we're going to create a play game function. Just going to write out real quickly the getColor function. So here the pseudocode is, again, pretty important just to set this up. The play game function is going to tell the user what the sequence of the colors is, and will then ask for the user to repeat it. If the answer that the user enters is correct, then we're going to play the game again with an additional color. If it's wrong, the game's going to end. And then finally, we're just going to use a little jQuery here so that when the user clicks the play game button on the index.html file, it runs the start game function. And this again is just a jQuery. We're using the pound sign to make sure that we're linking to an ID, and we're linking to the ID called start game. And then when the user clicks the button, we're going to run the function start game. We're going to go ahead and test to see if this works. Looks like it's not doing anything because we don't yet have a function that does anything, so we're going to create the function real quick called play game. We're just going to test this out to see if the 2 files are linking appropriately and the button's working. Looks like it's still not working. Looks like it's because we created the start game, or the play game function we're calling start game. So let's try it now, and it looks like it's working. All right, so now that we got the files linked together, we can go ahead and start coding some of these functions that we wrote above with the pseudocode. So first is this start game function. So this function is going to just get the 3 colors, and then it's going to run the function below called play game. So at first we're going to set the pattern equal to a blank, and then we're going to go ahead and create the function get color, and we're going to eventually run this 3 times in the start game function to get 3 colors. But for now we're just going to create the initial color sequence. So here, now what we're going to do is we're going to get a randomly generated number between 1 and 4. And this is again just using the math.random, which gets a random number between 0 and 1. We're going to multiply by 4 to get a random number between 0 and 3, or 3.99. And then we're going to round it and add 1 so that we get a round integer in between 1 and 4. And this will make it a little easier for us to use a switch statement later on. Just going to move the pseudocode above the description there. And now we're going to create a switch statement. So this is going to say, based off of what x is, we're going to do one of the following. If x is equal to 1, we're going to return r for the color red. If it's equal to 2, we're going to return green for the color green. 3, we're going to return blue for the color blue. And 4, we're going to return 4, we're going to return yellow. So again, this is a switch statement. It's basically just a multiple if-then statements. So this is saying if x is equal to 1, then return r. If not, if it's equal to 2, then return g, 3 blue, 4 yellow. And then this return statement is just going to return this to whatever calls this function. So you'll see in a second why this is useful. All right, now that we've built out the function getColor, we're going to go ahead and change the start game function so that the pattern variable will get 3 new colors when we start the game. So we're going to do this now, and what we're going to do is we're going to have pattern equal to getColor, which is going to call the function getColor. And as you remember from before, the function returns a value. So it will either return the value r, g, b, or y. So if we run this function 3 times, we're going to get 3 different colors, and then we're going to store that in the variable pattern. All right, now we can come down and double check, make sure we haven't got anything wrong. And one thing we need to do first is we need to make pattern a global variable. That way we don't have to pass the variable along locally to each individual function. So we're just going to set this equal to an empty string. Then in the play game function, we're going to first alert the user what the colors are that are in the Sally Says pattern, and then we're going to prompt the user for a response after they see what the colors are, and we're going to store that in the variable that we create called answer. Right, now we're going to create an if-then statement. If the user's answer is equal to the correct pattern, we're going to tell the user that they got it correct. And we're going to increase the score by 1. And of course, we have to make this a global variable as well. We're just going to set it equal to 3 because we're going to start off with 3 colors. And if the user doesn't get it right, we're going to create an else statement and tell the user that they got it wrong. And we're going to tell them how many colors they got correct, and then we're going to tell them what the correct answer was. And then if the user does get it right, we're going to set the pattern equal to pattern plus get color. This is just going to add one color to the variable pattern, and then we're going to play the game again. And this is worth noting just real quick. So when we call the function play game, it's actually calling this function. So this is, again, something called recursive. This is a recursive function because it's a function that calls itself. So this can keep on running as long as this if-then statement is true. So this is sort of similar to a while loop. It's just another way to do it, and this is called recursive functions. Just gonna go through and check to make sure we didn't make any mistakes. Okay, now we're gonna see if our code actually works. Looks like it's not actually showing the color patterns that Sally says, so we're gonna have to go and try to see what's wrong with our code. It looks like we called the function play game, but we had to call the function start game in order to actually initialize the game. Okay, now it looks like it's calling the pattern correctly, and we can just type in to make sure it's actually working. Keep on doing this. And now it looks like we are almost there. It gives us the correct answer, but it says we only got 3 colors correct when we got a bunch more. So that looks like it's still not working. So now we have to go back and try to fix that. So it looks like, so because the play game function is happening before this score is increased, we're actually not increasing the score. What happens is this runs the function play game, so it goes back to run here and never actually runs this line of code. So if we move this line of code up 1, that should fix the problem. So this is where recursive functions are a little tricky. So hopefully you all figure this one out, but definitely a little tricky there. All right, and we just moved that above the line, and now it should work. All right, let's play the game again. Yeah, and it looks like it worked. All right, so I'm just going to clean up a few things here, but that's basically the end of this part of the video. So this project is going to have 3 parts, and we just finished the first part. So tune into the next video to learn how to do the second part of this project.